The other day, I found myself standing in a supermarket aisle, one of those long, gleaming pathways stacked floor to ceiling with food from every corner of the globe. Under the bright fluorescent lights, everything looked polished, plentiful, almost impossibly abundant. Boxes in perfect rows, fruit imported from continents away, dozens of brands competing to sell me the exact same product in slightly different packaging. Yet as I stared at those shelves, I couldn't help but wonder, how did we get here? And more importantly, what does all this actually mean? We carry devices that place entire libraries, cinemas, and shopping malls in our hands. We stand on a planet whose resources have filled our homes with food, tools, toys, and comforts in every form imaginable. We live in cities built to offer more goods, more choices, more conveniences than any generation before us. On the surface, it looks like humanity's greatest dream fulfilled: abundance. Enough for everyone, and then some. Enough to cure boredom, soothe anxiety, erase inconvenience. But something about that bright humming supermarket aisle felt off. It was as if the light we've been following had grown too harsh in some places and too dim in others. As if the glow that promises happiness was starting to flicker, revealing the shadows it casts. And it made me wonder, is this really the abundance we hoped for? Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to explore what abundance is and what it should be. First, we'll examine the hidden cost of material plenty. Second, we'll confront the inner emptiness it often leaves behind. And finally, we'll imagine a truer kind of abundance, one that illuminates rather than blinds. Let's begin with what hides behind the glow of our convenience. Every cheap t-shirt, every smartphone, every cup of coffee carries a cost far beyond the price tag. And it's a cost paid mostly by people we will never meet. The cobalt in our devices is mined by children in the Congo, working without protective gear in tunnels that collapse without warning. The coffee beans that fuel our mornings grow on land where forests once stood. The fast fashion that allows us to buy a new wardrobe every season is sewn in factories where wages are too low for workers to afford the garments they themselves make. We tend to imagine progress as a brighter bulb, offering more comfort, more options, more convenience. But light that blinds can be just as dangerous as darkness that hides. Because when we prize low prices over human dignity, when we treat the planet as a warehouse instead of a home, we push suffering to the edges of our awareness. And if abundance requires dimming the lives of others so ours can shine, then the glow we celebrate is really just glare. Which brings me to the second crisis, one happening not in distant countries, but inside us. We live surrounded by more goods, gadgets, and conveniences than any society in history, yet we feel strangely hollow. We have an abundance of possessions, but not an abundance of peace. We are hyper-connected, yet profoundly lonely. We work longer hours to afford conveniences that were supposed to save us time. This is the paradox of our age. We have more tools for communication, yet deeper feelings of isolation. More entertainment, yet growing boredom. More options, yet increasing dissatisfaction. Psychologists call this the paradox of choice. The more options we have, the harder it is to feel content with any of them. Because every decision becomes a comparison. Every purchase carries the quiet whisper, was this the best one? Could I have chosen better? So after a certain point, money stops making us happier. Yet the pursuit continues, like chasing a lantern always just out of reach. It promises warmth, but never quite delivers. So we scroll, click, and consume, yet feel increasingly restless. We fill our closets and our carts, but not our spirits. We accumulate belongings, but lose the feeling of belonging. Our abundance traps us in cycles of comparison, debt, and distraction. We end up with full cupboards but empty hearts, bright screens but dim inner lives. But this doesn't have to be the end of our story. Because when the glare becomes unbearable, when the noise becomes overwhelming, we are finally forced to turn away and ask one of the most important questions a modern human can ask. What is enough? Because true abundance was never about excess. It's about sufficiency. It's not the blinding spotlight of endless consumption. It's the steady glow of enough. Enough for everyone. Enough for tomorrow. Enough for a life that feels meaningful rather than material. Consider the story of Joshua Fields Millburn and Ryan Nicodemus, known as the Minimalists. They had everything modern abundance promises: high salaries, big apartments, gadgets in every drawer, clothes for every occasion, but internally they felt drained, suffocated even, surrounded by abundance, yet starved of purpose. So they began letting go, one item at a time. And what remained wasn't emptiness, it was space. Space for relationships, space for creativity, space for rest, reflection, generosity. They discovered that abundance doesn't come from adding more to your life. It comes from removing what weighs you down. Because when we buy less, we begin to notice more. The morning sunlight, the shared meal, the conversation that lingers a little longer because there's nowhere else we need to be. We soften the harsh light of overconsumption and kindle a gentler, more sustainable glow, one that honors the planet and affirms the worth of every human being. So let me return to that supermarket aisle and the question I began with. Is that really the kind of abundance we want? I believe the answer is both no and yes. No, if abundance means this blinding pursuit of more. No, if it demands that people on the planet pay invisible costs. No, if it leaves us with cluttered homes and cluttered minds, but empty hearts. But yes, if abundance means something deeper. If it means the ability to care for one another. If it means the wisdom to know when we have enough. If it means the courage to choose compassion over convenience. Because abundance was never meant to be a floodlight that scorches. It was meant to be a lantern, steady, warm, shared, a light that reveals not just what we can take, but what we can give. Because the truest abundance is measured not by how much we own, but by how much we can give away and still feel whole. Thank you.